I'm Kristina Swarner, she, her. I graduated from RISD in illustration. I mainly work on children's books. For the last year, I've been trying to work more on my own stuff. I've sort of given myself like a sabbatical type year, and done a lot of paintings and started working in some media that I don't usually use, like collage and risograph.
That has been super cool.
Yeah, so it's like kind of branching off. It's kind of in like a sort of a new place right now. This room is the sunroom of my house. When I was a kid, my parents had a lot of art books around, and I was always like lying on my stomach on the floor, like looking at art books, and I just thought they were so cool. And then the first time my parents took me to the Art Institute, I think I was about 3 or 4, and I just said, I'm going to be an artist. And my parents were like, ha ha ha, that's cute. I'm like, no, I'm going to be an artist. Yeah, but the one of the paintings I just always was so fascinated by was La Primavera by Botticelli. There was just so much to look at in it. It was like going into this other world, and you weren't quite sure what was happening, because I know it's allegorical, and obviously didn't know about allegory because I was like a kid, but just like, who are these people, and why is she smiling, and why are they dancing, and it was very absorbing painting. It was in one of the books that my family had. I think it's in the Uffizi in Florence. I was there were two things really that affected me growing up, and I know I've talked with you about this before, but like my grandparents' house, where I spent a lot of time, was in the country, and I used to just spend a lot of time exploring these sort of mysterious woods and ponds and like swamps and things, and that sort of like sank into my psyche. And also I have very, very vivid dreams, as you know, and and sometimes I will dream paintings. Like I'll have very like detailed dream about a painting and how it should look. Yeah, they kind of come together, and like I've sort of try to recreate like the world I'm in when sort of like exploring nature and sort of dreaming. It's this other world. I just feel like I get into it when I make art, and I try to bring that forth in my artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That worked out kind of funny. It was Chronicle books. And the book was Yiddish, which
mm-hmm.
was like translations of Yiddish sayings. And I had sent the art director a little booklet I'd made of some illustrations I'd been working on, and I sent them to her in the mail. And she wrote me a handwritten letter back saying, I love them, I put them on my computer so I'd remember you. And then I heard from her again about a week later saying, like, oh, I just saw your illustration in New Reader, which is now defunct, but she's like, I would love for you to work on this book. And it was my first book, and I was so overjoyed. I went into the bathroom and looked in the mirror and just burst into tears. No, they were so good to work with, and sometimes what I like to do when I'm illustrating is take images I've done previously out of like my sketchbook and work them into the assignment, because I don't really like working from what's the word, like a constricted sort of way, so I had a lot of images in my sketchbook that were very easily adaptable to the proverbs in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And they loved them. They were very open to my ideas. So, let's see, I had taken a lot of printmaking courses at RISD. And when I graduated, I no longer had access to a press or, any facilities like that. So I was trying to sort of simulate that with drawing, that look with drawing, and it wasn't really working for me, because part of the reason I love printmaking so much is the surprise. When you lift the paper off, it's always like a surprise. So I realized I could do linoleum prints on my own without a press, and I was so excited one night that I got some linoleum, and I didn't have any cutters, so I sharpened the ends of pen nibs and stuck them in a cork, and I carved like 7 or 8 little prints and printed them. And that's actually, and then I painted over them with watercolors just to see how it would look, and I was really pleased with the result. And that's actually that ended up being the little booklet that I sent to Chronicle Books that got me
That's cool.
the job. Yeah, I had done watercolor over, ink and, all kinds of things, but I had not done it over a print before.
What made you want to do that?
It just called for it. I don't know. I was I just was like, okay, this is a black and white print, and I don't have any red ink, and this needs to be red, and this needs to be whatever. So it just, it did what I needed it to do. It was very hard to carve. Yeah. I had a knife sharpener, and I had these pen nibs, and I just stuck in the cork, and I just sharpened.
Okay, so you sharpen the pens.
And it was like a lot of work. It was very hard, inefficient, but it worked. It just, it was pretty natural. It just evolved. And then after a while, when I started making more books, I realized some of the techniques I was using weren't as conducive to looking good in print. So I had to sort of change some of the blues, or use less colored pencil, just because it wasn't how I wanted the final painting to look, but it was much more easy to look good in print, for a book. That was a great project to get. I grew up reading that book, and I already had visualized basically the entire book in my head, so when it came time to do the illustrations, it was almost as easy as breathing to make the sketches and the characters and everything, even the little details, what was on the shelves, and how the wallpaper, everything. It just came out of me very naturally. It was fun too, because they had the little pop-up thing at the back, so I got to engineer the little pop-up. But yeah, it was so fun to see when the printed copy came to me, opening it, and the little tree coming up. It was in sections, there was it was basically almost like an origami box, but in sections, and I did 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 sections of the tree and interlaced them. I just did, and they did all the putting together. I just did the parts. People, I know, a lot of people reading that book wish they could find a key and go in the secret garden. It's so it's such a wonderful idea. I grew up. My mother had a really big garden when I was growing up. She was a great gardener, I was very familiar with the way a garden looked when it was thriving and when it was dead in the winter. And I used to like the Mary in the story, I used to like going out in the winter and kind of scrabbling around and seeing if I could see the tulips starting to come up or anything. And even how it smelled, the smell of the dirt. And it was just, again, very kind of visceral for me, to imagine going into that walled garden and everything being dormant, and but a few things are starting to come to life.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Well, I had been to England, and there's obviously some great gardens there, like Sissinghurst Castle has this enormous garden and walled garden, and all kinds of things. And I think I was probably sort of influenced by that as well, just like because they do have like a big walled garden you can go in, and vines and just like, you know, you name it, just like it feels very English, which is, you know, it doesn't feel like a garden here. So I had to kind of incorporate that into the book too, into the illustrations. Yes, it was very repressed. I mean, it was like he was repressing everything. And when I drew him in the book, I made, there's one scene I made him like very large in the foreground. Just she's coming in the doorway to talk to him about asking for a bit of earth, like she wants a little garden. And he's just looking like almost like a wall in the foreground, and she's coming in. And then later in the book, he does sort of relax and, you know, go into the garden and after they get it blooming and everything. And I did want to portray him and the garden. And everything is repressed. Like the garden is just like a wall. Like in the first picture of the garden, it's just like basically a wall with her outside it. Yeah, I was always more struck by his treatment of his son than I was by the garden. Like just stuff way in this corridor where nobody can go, you know.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they came around in that, right?
They did,
yeah.
they did, yeah.
Which is good.
That I've ever made?
Yeah.
That's a lot. Oh, man. You know, obviously very proud of my first books. My first, you know, book for adults was Yiddish Wisdom. My first book for children was Before You Were Born by Roaring Brook Press. And I was very proud of both of those. And some illustration, an illustration from Before You Were Born was chosen for a show in the Eric Carle Museum. And my more recent stuff I've been very excited about, and I'm very proud of that too. It's not really children's book oriented, but it's very exciting to me.
Yeah, like the portrait with the white hair. That's an incredible piece.
Oh, thank you.
I really love that one.
Yeah, it's always funny. Like the artists I don't emulate. Like they speak to me somehow, but I don't try to look like their art at all. I was talking with you, I think the last time I saw you, about Chico Munakata, Robert Coutula, who's like a French outsider painter. Joseph Cornell I love because he's got the same thing I always strive for, which is it draws you in. It's like and it's introspective art, you know. It doesn't come out to you, like you go into it, you know. Yeah, lately I've just been trying anything that's like music, movies, you name it, as long as it's like not depressing. She was wonderful. She was a good friend, an amazing woman. She was a playwright, a novelist, very, very vibrant, person. And when I first met her on a Zoom call, she read, I'd already read the manuscript for that book, but she read it aloud, and it was breathtaking. It just, it came from her heart. And she was very open to my interpretation of the story, very very positive. Just like, she was so wonderful. I really do miss her. It's a happy story. It's a story of celebration and gratitude. And I have gratitude for Shade. She is someone who would celebrate her birthday every day.
That's special.
Yeah, it is. It is. I would say just the immense amount of thinking that goes into it. Like, they don't see me, out on a walk thinking about it, or staring out the window thinking about it, or lying in bed at night thinking about it. Because it's like, if you drew a pie chart of my brain, I would probably say at least 75% of it I'm thinking about art in some form. And that doesn't show. It's like, that's where the things are coming from. They don't see that. Yeah, no, my whole life I've just had very vivid dreams, and sometimes awakened to not be sure if I had dreamt something or actually experienced something. And they're very like filled with imagery, and I'll wake up and I'm like, oh, I have to draw that. And it's not anything I could have thought of, consciously awake. It did. It just came naturally. It's like it had to. It was in my brain, and I didn't know it was there. And then it was like, here I am, and I was like, okay, well, you have to come all the way out. I will draw you. Yeah. Sometimes I will, like, if it's like kind of like a long, boring dream, I won't bother. And if it's a lot of times when I draw it, I can't draw the entire dream. I'll just make kind of a distillation of the dream.
Thank you.
You're welcome.